Stone Cold Prose, building better words.
Is Generation X really built different from other generations, especially the ones that came after us, millennials and Gen Zers? Or is this just talk? Hi guys, welcome back to Stone Cold Prose, where we build better words, better thoughts, and better men. I'm Miles Watson, novelist and author of numerous award-winning series, including Cage Life, Sinner's Cross, and The Chronicles of Magnus. I worked in Hollywood for 12 years, law enforcement for another 10, and now I break it all down and build it back better. So let's get into this. As a man who has spent the last 15 years working in various industries with people younger, sometimes a lot younger than myself, one of the most common refrains I hear from millennials and Gen Zers in regards to my generation, X, is that we hit different. We're built different. And yet at the same time, they have none of the venom towards us in the X bracket that they have for boomers, or to some extent even with each other. Now, I can't speak with any authority as to why they like us more. But I can say that having observed millennials and Gen Zers very closely in both work and social environments for many years, we are profoundly different. Now, I want you to understand this is not bragging or boasting. This is not a value judgment. My generation has a lot wrong with it. A lot. Nobody knows better than we do just how royally fucked up we are. At the same time, we have a quality no other living generation really has, and a lot of that stems from the fact that we were born at the end of an era. Not a decade or a generation, but an actual era, an age. We are the last survivors of a world that no longer exists, yet at the same time, we're very much a part of the world as it exists now. We straddle a historical fault line. Here are some of the things that differentiate us from those that came after. Number one is the Cold War bonus. The Cold War fucked us up in the head. I grew up just outside Washington, D.C., a short drive from the Pentagon, the White House, the Capitol, i.e. Ground Zero for the 6,000 Soviet nuclear missiles targeted at those exact areas. Horrifying movies like The Day After and Threads showed my generation, in the most explicit detail imaginable, exactly how slowly and painfully we would die of radiation poisoning, assuming we weren't simply incinerated in the inevitable first strike. Other movies like War Games, Dr. Strangelove, and Failsafe showed us how a single computer error or human lunatic could, at any moment, end the world at any time. We never expected to survive childhood. Punk music literally reflected the nihilism of our age, the belief that there was no point in anything because someday someone would push a button and bang would go humanity. It's impossible to convey just how fatalistic most of us were, even as small children. And this fatalism, while a bad thing in one way, had an upside. For most of us, life after the age of about 15 to 20 was just a bonus. We're literally living in the aftermath of our shelf life. We are decades off warranty and still kicking, just like the Voyager spacecraft, or a Twinkie. And this leads me to number two. Most generations are serious, but not desperate. Gen X is desperate, but not serious. We have all the same anxiety and depression you do, all the same fears about climate change and war and AI and all of it. We just don't care. See, that pesky Cold War imbued us with the ability to stare into the abyss and laugh. Not courageously, but because we're spiritually dead. We've got no souls to sell. Ours died in the face of the absurdity of ideas like mutually assured destruction or nuclear overkill capacity. This was the logic of the world we grew up in, the logic of a psychopath. One of the short stories in my Hoffer finalist and reader's favorite 5-star awarded collection, Devils You Know, shameless plug, is about how the devil has to retire because my generation makes his existence redundant. Number three, hose water and neglect. We were latchkey kids. We did not experience helicopter parenting. We were turned out of doors like cats at sunrise and expected back when the street lamps went on. In the meantime, the in-between time, ain't we got fun? It was a Capri Sun, a candy bar, a rolled-up magazine, and a bicycle. No helmets. We didn't wear them because they didn't exist. In my neighborhood, we took roller skates and ski poles down the steepest streets we could find. We Tarzaned from vines over the Potomac River, where you drown if you fall in because of the riptide vortex thing that it has. We caught tadpoles in the C&O Canal, not hygienic. We threw firecrackers at hornets' nests with disastrous results. We tried to reenact and did reenact the chariot scene from Ben-Hur on our sleds, and we threw fireworks at each other in addition to Yellow Jackets. We put snowballs under the gutter spouts so the runoff would turn them into ice balls so we could inflict more damage during snowball fights. And we did all of this with no ability to call for help if someone broke a limb or got run over by a bus. No phones, no text messages. We were out on our own, the weaker of us dying as nature intended. When you see one of us staggering down the hallway at work nowadays, you may feel disgust at our bald foreheads, our baggy eyes, and spare tire guts, but you're looking at a Darwinian super survivor. Respect. Number 4 is because we got most of our dopamine from physical activity, except for that weekly visit to the arcade, of course, we were generally playing outside year-round, cycling, running, sledding, swimming, and so on, which allowed us to experience more of actual rather than virtual life. Since aside from Atari, we had no virtual lives to actually live. Nor was our attention span artificially shortened by ultra-short form social media apps like TikTok. We can actually read books and do other things that require a concentration span longer than that of a squirrel who ate a crack rock thinking it was a nut. This makes us wise, and it's the reason the younglings come to us for advice. It's bad advice, but it's sincere. Number 5 is fuck your feelings. We're also insensitive. The elementary schools we attended were designed, built, and scheduled for the specific purpose of habitualizing us to factory work. That is a known fact, and it's why schools operate on factory hours, look like factories, and even ring bells at shift time. The purpose was not to educate us, but to merely break our wills and destroy any expectations we had about life or our own sense of dignity. Take bullying, for example. In the 70s and 80s, students were expected to sort out their own problems and not go to the teachers for help, no matter how badly they were being treated. Teachers openly mocked tattletales and playground snitches. And gym coaches, they were notorious for bullying students worse than the school bullies did. Nobody cared about our feelings. The generations after X were raised on the idea that the saying, "I'm offended," granted them magical powers. The only magical power it granted us was to be bullied even harder. To admit taking offense was to admit weakness and invite cruelty. In order for us to survive this Lord of the Flies environment, we had to develop thick skins, vast arsenals of insults and powers of sarcasm, so sharp that ninjas studied with us to learn our deadly skills. This may have resulted in all sorts of childhood trauma, but it also gave us the proper ruthless attitude which is necessary to handle adult life generally and the business world in particular. We never expected to be treated like anything but shit in our jobs, and hey, we were not disappointed. Number 6 is that we're comfortable with violence. Generation X was the last generation which was taught that masculinity was not negotiable, nor was it toxic. It was actually necessary for the continued existence of society and came with criteria. If a male wanted to be considered a man, he had to follow a strict code of behavior or forfeit the title. And at the top of that code was standing up for yourself, your people, and your girl if you had one. Our inspirational story was Rocky. Our coming-of-age story was The Karate Kid. Our heroes were Luke Skywalker and Indiana Jones and Rambo, and I could go on and on, but you see the theme here. Being a man meant, among many other things, a willingness to throw down if throwing down was necessary, whether you could fight or not, whether you could win or not. A lot of the males born after Generation X, through no fault of their own, were not taught this code, nor were they introduced to sports or martial arts, which would make them more comfortable with violence. I was getting body slammed onto a judo mat when I was 14 years old. I was in what amounted to a fight club when I was 18. I fought in a kickboxing tournament when I was 39. I got my first black belt at 40. I still train at 52. We don't look for fights because at this age, people will just assume any black eyes we have are bags from sleeping poorly because we have to get up 6 times a night to piss. But we don't run from fights either, and people know it. Number 7 is no social media. In addition to making us more resourceful because we had to look up things in dictionaries and encyclopedias, I'll explain what those are in another video, growing up without social media makes us largely immune to cyberbullying and trolling. We know what real bullying is, like being stuffed into a locker or having your head jammed in a toilet or your backpack thrown out of a school bus window, possibly while you're still wearing it. Why the fuck would we fear some anonymous clown's poorly written insults delivered by DM? In addition, the fact that social media and cell phones and cameras did not exist when we were in school or college means that we got to commit all of our dumbest mistakes off camera. You know the phrase pics or it didn't happen? Well, guess what? My entire life from the age of 17 to 24 never happened. Prove otherwise. Prove that it did. Thus, I can lie about my past and no one can disprove it. This gives Gen Xers a wonderful sense of fake moral superiority and invincibility, which partially compensates for our crippling depression and self-loathing. Number 8 is no porn. In our area, you had to work very hard indeed to see a naked lady. It required planning, logistics, and sometimes theft. We were woefully ignorant of the entire subject of sex. Never mind your old man's Playboy magazine or some lingerie ads in the paper or trying to make out what was going on in the scrambled adult entertainment cable channel through all those wavy lines. We sometimes had to resort to National Geographic. Thus, when years passed and we finally saw a member of the opposite sex in a state of nature for real, we were excited and grateful. We weren't comparing them unfavorably to a porn star who had 12 cosmetic surgeries and possesses measurements that no human female could attain in real life. What's more, in order to even date, much less have sex, we had to go out and interact with people. None of this dating application swipe left, swipe right bullshit. We actually had to develop social skills through trial and painful and humiliating error, which in turn allowed us to build self-confidence, which is why the women I work with today constantly make reference to my swaggering walk. It's not arthritis. Look, folks, I am not saying Generation X is better than any other generation before or since. As the saying goes, just because we carry our baggage well, don't mean it ain't heavy. We have our own problems, believe me, but we are built different. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to take some vitamins and have a nap. Guys, if you enjoyed today's video, please remember to like, subscribe, comment, hit the notification bell, and remember to check out my books on Amazon. The link is in the description. See you next time, and until then, stay cold and take your Geritol.